104 Spice FM, Nairobi.
And at a few minutes after 9 o'clock, a very good morning to you. And we're getting into the final hour of Kenya's biggest conversation for this morning, as well as for this week into the first week of April. A number of conversations that we'll have, and we'll speak directly to the President this morning. Dear Mr. President, we will speak, and there's some things that we need to then be able to look into. We'll talk about that in just a bit. ALX, a pathway onto which I can step on when I am looking towards getting global education. Dennis?
When you talk about global education and global universities, and when you talk about these global universities, one would beg to ask, what exactly are we talking about? The universities that ALX has partnered with, and let's just look at them. We talk about Vanderbilt University, Macalester College, Patton University, Hamilton College, Bates College, Tufts University, UC Berkeley, or the University of Chicago, just to paint a picture of some of the universities that they have. And LX Pathways opens doors to these and many, many more universities that one can join in. Remember, 21st of April is the deadline, and you can apply as the competition still for these opportunities are high. You go to bit.ly/LX Pathway SFM. That is bit.ly/LX Pathway SFM. Be sure to apply. Get yourself an opportunity. What are you waiting for?
All right, there you go. And getting into a number of conversations that we will have this morning around certain things that the president then does need to address. And as we get into that, joining us this morning for that conversation is Fanya Mambo Kenothia, a lawyer, as well as, a social commentator, as well as, dipping fingers and whole self into making sure that some of these conversations remain front and center for things that must be addressed. Fanya Mambo, good morning.
A very good morning to you, and a very good morning to every listener and viewer.
How are you doing?
I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah.
That's how I'm doing.
You're happy. That is good.
Yes.
We like happy.
Yeah.
Look, as we get into some of these conversations, speaking directly to the president, there's certain areas that we'll look at that need attention. But before we do that, CT will welcome you today with today's proverb.
And we wonder why it is we don't make much progress. We wonder why we never seem to move ahead. And we wonder why we are so dependent on other people. And we keep wondering why. Now, the proverb. A whistle will not call back a dog that has escaped from the leash.
Nice one. A whistle will not call back a dog that has escaped from the leash.
No, it won't.
To me, it's more like water spilled. You can't recollect it. It's more like that. It's more like it's if it's bolted, it's out. The horse is out of, and if it's bolted, it's bolted. It's gone. So you're using something that cannot bring it back, which is the whistle. Try to call it back. You're telling to come back to a place it will come back. I think it's just a connotation of that when some things like water under the bridge, ikipita imepita. Yeah.
It's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
Okay, essentially. And that's true. Certain things, when they're gone, and you're not able to get them back unless you use a different kind of tactic. Dear Mr. President is a segment that we have here when we're talking about things that are happening in the country and are necessary for some attention to be paid to directly at the foot of the president. We're looking at some of those issues this morning, and Fanya Mambo is going to help us out with some of those as we do. We're going to start off with one of them, which is corruption. Corruption, big ticket item in the country. We continue to look at in as much as it's been talked about for decades. Most recently, the CS for the Treasury, John Badi, said, well, you know what? Perhaps there are ways in which we can now deal with corruption. Perhaps what we ought to do, because we've tried to go the way of the law, that doesn't seem to work very well, and it takes very long for some of these cases to be tried and then tested. So perhaps what we should do is say, you know what, this money that you have stolen, instead of going to put it in foreign bank accounts, how about you bring it here and let's put it into the country, and let's see then how we can use those proceeds to actually work towards development. This is what was said just a few days ago. There seems to be, dear Mr. President, a lackadaisical manner in which things of corruption are dealt with. And the question is, when are we actually going to see that there is clear-cut ways, that are clear-cut ways of dealing with corruption and sorting those out once and for all? Fania?
I think first and foremost, let us look at where the bulk of this money goes. You've heard of the famous Swiss accounts? We have countries that know that there are horrible African leaders who will collect so much money and stash it in Swiss accounts, and they'll die before they use that money. It's building roads there. It's giving them good infrastructure. In that country, you can get a loan for everything, even a wedding. Because it is the money that Africans have worked for so hard. And all our horrible leaders who stole it have taken it there. And it is building that economy. I mean, those countries that have allowed stupid, gluttonous African leaders to stash money in their countries have benefited so much from our money. Because you go to some of those countries, they have nothing. They don't even have a mineral they mine. They can't even grow coffee. They can't grow tea. The cash crop they have is having accounts for where foolish leaders just take money and keep there. That's their cash crop. And that money has built those economies and run those economies for a very long time. I think our African leaders need to wake up and to stop being stupid and to realize that there's only so much you can do with money. And that too much of this money that they stash out there doesn't help us. It's actually stifling our economy. I wish they brought that money back to start
So you
with.
do agree with the CS when he said, actually bring the money back and let's use it to develop the country. Whether or not we'll deal with individual, totally different story, but bring the money back here and let's see how we can use it
First
to
they
work
bring
here.
the money back, but as they do that, of course, we shall prosecute them later. We shall first lie to them that we won't. Then once they bring it, we can take them to jail for having brought it back and for having stolen it. But then having said that, I think there's another way to look at it. And what I fear the most is how we go about this whole issue of corruption. Number one, if you come to Nairobi County, for example, there are so many spoiled roads, horrible roads in Kilimani that will not get fixed. Why will they not get fixed? Because when we were growing up, the city county had a grader. They had a tractor driver or an operator, permanent and pensionable. And anytime a road had a problem, the city county would send their grader with a driver. They have a city engineer. They knew where to get the raw materials. They would fix the road. But nowadays, they have decided to turn everything into a tender opportunity. When you look at Kura, for example, Kenyan Urban Roads Authority, there is this another one called Kera. There are so many of them. And imagine their tender outfits. How can you have something called Kenyan Urban Roads Authority and they don't own a shovel? One shovel. Everything they do, in fact, I think we should just call them the Roads Procurement Board. And then we merge them, all of them, into a roads procurement outfit, because the only thing they do is process tenders for roads and give monies to their cronies. There are services that government needs to offer, and we need to learn from other countries. It is very hard for you to go to China, for example, and find a private company fixing a public road. Here you find somebody who cannot fix a toilet, somebody who tells you, "Mi nilisomea beauty." And then I set up a company for tenders.
Nimepata
Now that
contract
person
ya
is given
barabara.
a contract to make a road. And then you wonder why Gong Road, you feel like you're on the ocean, it's a wave. Because it was given to somebody whose qualification was nothing close to anything. They were not even supposed to have been qualified to build a toilet to start with. Now these people are building roads. So corruption is when we say that government needs to start offering services to people as opposed to offering tenders, because what we have created are tender issuing outfits. When you have a county, I'm telling you, there's a guy who's employed by the Nairobi City County. His job description, to drive county grader. 3 months, county grader Ijaguruma. And all the roads that are being fixed by private graders.
And that guy is earning a salary every month.
When you change a system, you change a great deal. There used to be a Ministry of Works. And there were roads that the Ministry of Works would look after. And you knew within the region. Now, the configuration that we have, where there are roads that look for urban, rural, some look for highways, look after highways, that configuration theoretically makes sense. But when you look at what gets done, in the name of supervision, because that is one of the roles that these institutions are supposed to carry out, you have to ask, what exactly do they supervise? Because the road is repaired because it was damaged. 2 drops of rain fall on the road and suddenly you have gaping holes.
Hey, City, not even 2 drops of road. They intentionally start repairing those roads when the rains start. So that means they have to wait until the rains end, then repair the road. I can tell you for a fact, because along Naivasha Road, when the rain started, that's when they started cutting. So now as we speak, we have potholes and whatnot, because it's the county or those who manage the roads that put those potholes on the roads.
Meaning they started repairing the road, the sort of triangles you see on the road, they want to repair before it rained. Oh, by the way, what that means, since vehicles are still on that road, that so-called triangle will actually get bigger.
Yes.
So are we saying, even as we address the president and we're looking at some issues that need to be paid attention to this morning, dear Mr. President, are we saying that perhaps he's unaware? Or are we saying at the same time that some of these issues are maybe too small for him to be looking at into detail, and that he has actually put people in place who should be watching over some of these issues, and that the corruption watchdog that has also been placed, right in government is not doing its job? Has the president failed, or has the people...
Let's just say that those ones, we can excuse him and say they are too small for him. But there is one that is not too small for him.
What's that?
We were told 1.3 trillion was withdrawn. Ni kama kwa ATM. 1.3 trillion. Fantastically. And we are okay as a country. And we have also been told that there's a lot of money that is not going, especially look at the SHA, that is not going through the exchequer. It's just going into some funny accounts. And we are okay with that. So it's not, and I usually say, if the president is not aware, what's wrong with resigning? Because if you don't understand what's going on, it's okay to resign and let somebody who understands what is going on continue to be president.
Mr. Fanyamambo, how many presidents have you seen resigning on this country?
No. You see, I've always told people, you remember this famous KDF telling us how we are not supposed to say Ruto must go.
No, that's not what he said.
Here we go.
Yes,
Okay.
they said that song they don't want to hear.
That is not what he said. I happen to be at that particular lecture. It is not what he said.
Tell us what he said.
What he said is actually summarized in today's Nation, and I will read to you what the Nation has said.
Yes.
So when some people say, this is with reference and quoting Chief of Defense Forces General Charles Kahariri, so when some people say they are tired of this government, a government they elected on their own, and say must go, that must go must be done according to the Constitution.
Exactly, that's what I was coming to. I was saying there are very many other parts of the Constitution we haven't explored, and resignation is one of them. It's provided for in the Constitution. For any president who feels like Kenyans are disturbing him with a lot of noise and saying he must go, he can invoke that part of the Constitution that is called resignation, and he can resign. There's also another one that we haven't tried, and we were hoping IBC comes. I have a case in court, and we were saying we want a referendum this year for Kenyans to decide whether they want President Ruto to continue being president or not. That case is in court. In fact, we are just waiting to get a hearing date and everything. And we are praying that the judges give us our wish. We do a referendum because it's media to determine whether we want to continue having him or not. So in answering him, would like to tell him, KDF, nobody is interested in anarchy. In fact, we are so invested in this country. Aujui kuna wengine wetu tuko na biashara ya smoki kitu kadogo, and that is a huge investment for us, and we don't want to lose it. So we are not going to allow this country to go into anarchy. We want a good way of removing the president from office, and I promise you it's going to be constitutional.
Kinuthia, one would beg to ask, as we talk about corruption in terms of the government must deal with it and whatnot, what is the responsibility of us as citizens in making sure that we equally don't partake in the same?
Now, you are asking a very hard question about citizens not partaking in corruption. And it was going to be very hard. Just look at the presidential tour that was happening within the mountain. And already you've seen complaints of people saying, we have not been paid. We were promised that we shall get money. We were promised that we shall get money
For appearing
during these particular rallies.
Yeah.
And we have appeared and we have not been paid.
But the citizenry could have as well just said no. Come
No,
whether we show up or
you
not,
see,
don't
you
show up.
see, I come from Mount Kenya. And in Mount Kenya, we have a saying. You know, he thinks he's the only one who has a monopoly of proverbs. We're saying you don't bury...
Actually, no. I think you think that I have a monopoly of proverbs.
So
we say we don't bury the elephant with its tusks. It's very wrong. You know, when the elephant dies, you don't bury it. So we have an elephant we are planning to bury in 2027. So we need to remove the tusks. This money that is being brought is our money anyway. We know.
So you might as well take it.
So we just want to take it, but we have told people, we've put a disclaimer. This is not the kind of money that you buy milk for your son with. Yeah, they might start becoming number last in class. Hii ni pesa mbaya, unalipa nayo deni mbaya ya Fuliza, sijui ya Shylock, you pay if you have a bad landlord. This is the kind of money you collect and pay those bad debts. And then the clean money that you earn from your sweat, you can use it, you can buy milk and food for your children.
You're being serious?
Yes, I am.
So it's okay for citizens to be corrupt. That's what
It's not okay for citizens to be corrupt, but it's okay for citizens to receive their money.
Corruption.
That is coming back to them.
You are a lawyer, and you know full well that with our laws, the person who participates in something which is corrupt or illegal is not just as guilty as the person who is doing the corrupting. They are the case in point, stolen goods.
Yes.
If you are found with stolen goods,
You go in.
your case is far more serious than the person who actually stole the goods.
Yes.
Because you are encouraging
Yes.
that particular economic activity.
No, Mount Kenya is very different. Let me explain. This particular presidential tour, we were being paid listening allowance, appearing allowance. You know, it is very hard for you to sit and listen to lies. You need to be paid to listen to lies. And you need to set a time frame about, you know, ikipita 30 minutes, you increase the allowance. So this was a contract. It was a contract for services. It is hard for you to get crowds where we are. So we are providing crowds for you.
Crowds for hire, essentially,
Yes,
is
you
what
are
you're
paying.
saying, and you're being paid.
You're
It's a
paying for
contractual
services.
obligation.
It's a
Just like
contractual
somebody who
obligation.
would bring tents and chairs
Yes,
or be
exactly.
a caterer.
Because you can imagine that meeting would have had tents, chairs, loudspeakers, and everything, but nobody to be addressed. So there was this missing link. These people provided the people to be addressed, and it was being provided for a fee. It was an agreement.
Okay.
Only that, sir, these people, they didn't keep their end of the bargain, because liars, you don't want to listen to them for so long. You come for a short period of time, you earn your money for that period of time, and you go. Sometimes they work overtime. That's the only problem we have. They should have paid for overtime.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even as we address the president and dear Mr. President, say this corruption issue that you have to deal with in the country is quite huge, but we're saying at the same time, well, the people are not to blame for some small things that you see here. It is you, and this sits right at your doorstep with the generals that you've put in place, whether it be at cabinet level or wherever, or your departmental offices or authorities. That's where the real problem is. But with the people of Kenya, no.
And I'll tell you why. You remember when the famous this American agency, what you said, came to an end. They said they were spending $389 million US in this country. When you multiply, it's 5 billion. Can you imagine all the USA said vehicles we saw, all those programs we saw, all those NGOs that have been having conferences in hotels? And by the way, it was impacting our economy. Everything we saw, USAID, was 5 billion shillings per year. We have an allocation of 27 billion for our president for travel, leisure, accommodation.
27 billion.
Yes, that's what we are spending in a
27
year.
billion
Yes.
per year.
The other day, they just allocated him an extra 5 billion. I think Waliona Itoshi. So, and I sat with a parliamentarian on set and I was telling him, shame on you, because you're one of those people who sat the other day and approved 5 billion for the president, and he's alone. And that's what USAID is spending on the whole country for a whole year with all their programs that have impact that we can see. So it goes to tell you where the problem is. I wish if the president sat at Harambee House, you can imagine how many budget. That's the problem we have. I don't know what he's doing on top of Land Cruisers. He needed to have sat at Harambee House, would have saved a lot of money. And that money can go into free primary education and all these other programs that needed to be done. In fact, I have said as opposition, because I'm in opposition family, that we have a 20-point agenda on how we want to do things after 2027. Number 1 is Ruto must go. Number 2 is Ruto must go. Number 3 is Ruto must go. All the way until number 10.
Okay.
Ruto must go. That's the first 10-point agenda, because it's very simple to sell to Mwananchi. So the
and
first
after-
10 point.
and after he's
So
gone,
number 11 is that we are going to pass a law in parliament that prohibits a president from spending 600 million to go around launching projects for 20 million. Some of them were transformers, some of them were bulbs, some of them were green pipes for water, ile pipe wewe unaweza eka ama MCA eke. And some of them he opened classes worth 600,000. We must come up with a law that will prohibit the president from spending 600 million on a tour to go and launch projects worth 15 million or 5 million or 6 million. That must come to an end.
Are those launching of projects, or are those projects that essentially were already there and it
They
was
were
relaunching of
Relaunching.
projects? So we're looking at an even bigger issue here,
Yes.
whereby we see that, certain things we saw that they were in existence before. So there's a spending of money that has taken place. And are we linking this directly? Because it's using state resources that could easily go somewhere else. And we're not making the link between these projects, which had already been there and had not been completed, but we're spending more money to go and relaunch them in the name of looking for votes for 2027. This seems to me like a circus of the most bizarre, and that's happening. How do we then address some of these issues and say, come on, we can see exactly what's going on here? But we don't. You know what we do? We say, pay us, what did you call it? Crowds for hire. We will come and we'll sing and dance for you. Whereas the crowds could actually say, hey, come on, hold on a minute. This electric fence, you already launched it, Buana. Can we move on? This tap, you've launched it already. This sewer station or whatever it was that was, this has already been launched. The thing, we are waiting for it to even be finished and you've come and relaunched it. We should be able to address the president and be able to say, come on, we can see exactly what's happening here.
The alternative would have been worse. And I'm glad, I thank the people of Mount Kenya. I've always told them, never go out there to heckle the president. It is bad manners. In fact, you'd rather stay at home than go heckle him. So I've always told people, democracy does not mean bad manners. I would never leave my house to go and heckle the head of state. I have always told our people not to do that. So if you have to go there and get a listening allowance for listening to things that will not happen. Bado tunangoja machine ya chapati and a few other things.
It's going to take a minute, but okay.
Yeah, but going there to heckle the president is something we have never advocated for. It's not in good taste. Let him come. Let him, and it's because actually he's shown to some extent he's a gentleman. They are paying. You remember border guys had gone to State House to demand for their money, and I hear they think they were paid. That's why they are no longer there making noise about their money. So, but these trips have been also very unfortunate for Kenyans. First, you remember we lost a French national when it was happening in Nairobi, accidentally going on a presidential motorcade. And then we have also lost so much property. You remember the thieves who were following the president. And they think they love the president because everywhere he went, they would follow. They were stealing phones in the daylight. They were robbing people. They were, and that presidential tour became a very, very expensive thing for people. I'm glad that those thieves did not follow him in Mount Kenya because we've not had complaints of robberies that have happened after that. So these things need to be put.
Don't follow him to Mount Kenya.
They did. I think they forgot the direction to that side. But the bulk of Nairobi, they did a lot of bad things. And we are hoping and praying that where we are living, we don't want another presidential tour because it's going to cost us funds and women are going to lose their passes. And I mean, a lot of people, and they might just knock down another guy. So we just pray that those visits first come to an end. There's a lot the president can achieve from Harambee House. We've always submitted. There's so much he can achieve from sitting at the office as opposed to being on the roads.
That is what you think, isn't it?
That's what I know.
You see, what we see the president doing is what the president wants to do. That's how he sees himself achieving the goals that he has. And methods such as the ones we now see are the ones he used. Perhaps more vigorously, perhaps more energetically, perhaps many more times to actually get the mountain to vote for him.
Explain to me, I would want to understand like a 3-year-old, how a person will come and get RSF and host them at KICC in broad daylight and cause us to lose exports just on tea only to Sudan worth 5 billion. And then go around a whole mountain launching projects that don't amount to 500 million. What is the common sense? What's the logic in doing things that makes a nation lose 5 billion in terms of tea exports? And I'm glad the Sudanese embassy came out very clearly and said, we are not importing anything from Kenya anymore. And it's not just tea that we were selling to them. Now Sudan is not buying from us. Our tea is stuck in Mombasa and someone is busy coming to you to launch classrooms and steamer and transformers and Kenya Power poles. Yeah, and people have closed their shops and markets are not operating. Do you know how much money people lose when a whole market is closed for a day? And how badly that impacts on the economy.
You see, yes.
What kind of economic policy is that?
You are a political leader in the mountain.
Yes.
you are the one who's just told us how the mountain understands the give and take principle of. You want us to come and converse with you, we want a sitting allowance.
Facilitate us.
You want us to... Now, you, the political leaders and your ilk, are the ones who have the duty of also... What you've just said is pertinent, very pertinent, of informing your people. But did we see them understanding that correlation? They came up in large numbers. What did that achieve? They were polite. What if they had stayed away to show that they are not happy with the decisions that have been made that really impact them economically?
I'll tell you something. And we know this to be true. The president does what he wants.
Yes.
And it is very easy to get any Kikuyu speaking person, put them in a bus and take them wherever. I mean, we saw how many boda followed him for kilometers. So it was either the people of that locality benefit from that money, he was still going to have a meeting, or the buses that we saw, and there were many, and they are full on the internet, there were so many, carrying some people even from as far as Dandora, as long as you can speak Kikuyu. So those meetings would still have happened, and there would still have been Kikuyu speaking people there, and he would still have said that the people of Mount Kenya are with him.
What would be
So
the president?
what we are saying is, let's say the people of Moranga said we are not coming out. What would stop him from getting Kikuyus from Dandora and Kayole and Umoja and filling them in one space? And remember, they were very clever. No meeting was done in a stadium. All their meetings were being done in business marketplaces.
By the roadside of the market.
Closing roads so that you just cause congestion and make it appear like you have a crowd.
What would be the message to the president? We're going to take a break at this point. We're looking around this whole, corruption issue and saying how you deal with it. It seems like your message is, we're not addressing him, but we're saying that you need to go.
The message is simple. Sit down at your office. The president has an office. And work from your office, not from the Land Cruiser top. Kenyans will be happy. President Kibaki worked so much from his office. He only made 33 international trips in 10 years. And he was rarely seen going around markets. In fact, he had a problem when he came to launch a project and he found idlers. He was saying, what are these people doing? We came to launch a dam. We just need the few people who are related to the dam, and that's it. Why should we have people closing their businesses to come and see President Kibaki? That's the kind of thinking the president needs to have. He should be thoroughly disillusioned to see people available on a Tuesday.
Fanya mambo, that was President Kibaki's style. What we're seeing is President Ruto's style.
Which is a bad style.
Okay.
Let's take a break. On that note, it's 26 minutes to 10. Dear Mr. President, that's what we're talking about. We've talked about certain things and how, state resources are being used. We're looking at how, the style that is being used to get votes, where there should be work that should be ongoing. There are certain things that should be done at a particular time and being done in a cycle. Fanya Mambo Kinuthia is our guest this hour. Dear Mr. President is a segment that we're on. We're coming back and we're looking at other areas to which we will address, Dear Mr. President.
Where we bring you the best deals in fashion, tech.
Is Culture Quest.
We start new projects, regardless of what we are seeing that legacy achievements will be, that everything that had started before, we will complete them, we will pay pending bills, we will make sure that things are running as they should before we touch new projects. Merit in that?
I don't think that the Kenyans have made it clear that there are only 3 projects that they want completed. Those 3 projects are very close to the hearts of Kenyans. And those 3 projects would leave money at the disposal of Kenyans to do everything else. Project number 1, make sure that the healthcare system is working. Kenyans wants to be sure that if I take my old ailing mom to hospital, that this shashashishoshu will pay. That's what Kenyans want. And they want it to be functional and working. Project number 2, university funding model. Kenyans want to know, HELB was so predictable. They want a system that they know works. And project number 3 that Kenyans want very much is the capitation to schools. Anybody who has a child in a school in Kenya today will tell you they are paying twice the amount of fees they ever paid before this administration came into place. High schools have become very expensive. Primary schools have become very expensive. And what they are doing is they are trying to lie to you and give bursaries to your area MP so that the area MP can make you queue for a whole day. And then they become a small god and they give you 5,000 and then you clap for that MP. But what Kenyans want is just allocate money to school. When parents know that their children are going to school, the money they would have spent on fees, they will spend on other things that will develop their lives. So these other shenanigans of telling us that you are building more, I don't know what, Kenyans are not ready for that right now. First, fix the basics. You cannot go into doing all those other turnkey projects before the basics are fixed. Work on the basics, make sure the basics are making sense, and then now start doing other things. You can't come home and start telling your wife, I want to paint the ceiling and the roof is leaking. You work on the basics first, and then the rest of the things will fall in place.
Yet, Kinuthia, one would argue that as much as we have these projects that have to work. We have education, we have healthcare that have to work, the funding model, which, yes, we agree must work. But there's a business somewhere, businessman or a farmer somewhere who wants a road to work for them to be able to equally contribute economically to the republic. So what we are asking is, in terms of ensuring that, say, let me give you an example. If you walk around the SHA offices, there is a road that was being constructed by Uhuru Kenyatta that was abandoned upon this administration coming into place. And we beg to ask, because that is a road that was constructed using public money. It has been abandoned, public money down the drain. Is there need to start new projects and leave projects that had been budgeted for money spent to just go into waste?
I think we don't get it. What is not happening is what I would call common sense. Common sense is not happening. There are people who are not in good terms with common sense. It walks in, they walk out. Let me explain. How many graders do we have lying idle at NYS, for example? We just needed to do a total audit of the equipment that this country has and who has them. Even military, they have a lot. 70% of Kenyans live in the rural areas. Kenyans have not asked you to give them a tarmac road in their rural area. They've asked you to give them a motorable road. If we had common sense happening in the minds of people, it is possible to say, for example, NYS, specific areas, send them out with those graders that are lying idle, by the way, and rotting in yards. Government equipment is rotting in so many yards. And it is possible to make those roads motorable for Kenyans fast. That does not require any launching. Remember, as I told you, here at Nairobi City County, we have graders Zimelala in specific yards. One of them is up on Dagoretti. And those graders have an operator, na ameandikiwa to drive county grader. Permanent and pensionable. Na inakaa miezi 3 haijaguruma. And we are speaking about somebody coming to launch roads. Those graders are supposed to be on the road because the driver is there. You're not hiring a new driver. They have fuel. They have an allocation. I'm telling you, this country does not need anything outside of what we have. We don't even need to launch. We just need a common sense governor who says, how many graders are available in my county? And where do we send them out today? And keep a record of what they are doing every day. We shall fix all our roads. I can tell you for free.
So there could be a common sense issue, but there also could be an attention deficit issue, whereby attention is not being paid to the things that, require this attention. I mean, as you say it sounds like a no-brainer that you should be able to look around and say, come on, what are we dealing with here? That it's very simple, that all you need to do is move this block to this block and it fits perfectly in the space. It fits. I mean, it's you looking at the puzzle, and this is the shape of the missing piece, and the missing piece is right here. All you need to do is take it and put it there. So, I mean, it's an attention, paying attention to issues. And everybody that we look at who is in a position to make a decision, most people either have been given the mandate by the people or have been given the responsibility to do the work as appointment by the president. Do your job. Are we looking at an issue whereby people are just not doing their jobs? Do your job. You mentioned some critical issues. We talk about health. We can talk about it for hours. that look at the issues here. We talk about education, and that thing is still upside down from where it even began. And you have people who have been put in these positions to handle these matters. The development agenda, you have people who deal with investment, you have people who deal with trade, you have people who deal with manufacturing, you have people who deal with infrastructure across board. Is there too much to handle?
It's too much to handle for a brain that is incapable. I have seen this as the most special administration, where you look for the damnedest person in the room, you hire them, and then you get them 7 advisors. I have never understood that concept of someone with 7 advisors. You look for the damnedest, the person with the least thinking capacity. You hire them, and then you hire for them 7 advisors. Why don't you just get the brilliant one, and then you don't need 7 advisors? What is happening is the reason we are where we are is because many of the people who occupy the positions they occupy have no idea what they're supposed to be doing there. And that's why I told you those things that just require common sense and your eyes and looking and being able to fix things are not happening, and they're not being done.
You see, when you talk about common sense, I remember when the military took control of Nairobi, NMS, and the first thing they did was fix all the vehicles that had been lying idle in yards. Second thing they did is they repaired, I think it was a mining site where they would get material to fix
the asphalt plant. Yes,
the asphalt plant. And what that did is we saw Nairobi roads being repaired every day. And one would hope that with the new administration, those are things that they would pick and continue with them. So in terms of continuity, in terms of projects and whatnot, I mean, you talk about common sense. It seems as though it is not there.
Government, by the way, should not be looking for money right now. I mean, if you were to call out every minister and tell us how many vehicles, how many equipment are lying in your yard. I mean, you go to any parastatal, it is common sense. You will find a Land Rover Nambua, battery liisha, and then it didn't start for some time, and then they changed one tire and put. These vehicles are literally new, the bulk of them. They have very small problems. If government was to wake up today and decide they are going to auction everything that is lying idle, everything in the name of government, a Land Rover, a Land Cruiser, a pickup, one, whatever, Kenya would collect a lot of money.
You would mop up a pretty penny.
You would mop up a lot of money, and it would help us to be able to run this country. But unfortunately, that's not where we are. But also it would be good for us, as even we have this conversation, to talk about something that is very, very, very close to the hearts of Kenyans.
What
and
is
that
that?
is the IEBC. Because, Mr. President, you people are about to constitute an IEBC. And by sheer good luck or bad luck, the bulk of the people we are seeing having qualified to the list of the those who could have gone for interview are people who have interacted with yourselves in one way or another and campaigned for some of you and been in the camps of some of you, and they're about to become IBC commissioners. I would have wanted to fight that like the others. But then I have listened to Kenyans, and Kenyans have said, even if this administration gets 9 family members, 7 family members, brothers, sisters, uncles, and puts them there, all we want is IBC. And we have decided the votes against this administration, we shall make them so many that even IBC will be telling you we are related, but it is hard to steal these ones. So just give us an IBC, Kenyans have said. Even if you give us your cronies, it is fine. It is very interesting that out of the thousands of applications we got, the bulk of those people who are making it to the interviews are just people who've been close to you. So it was a predetermined thing. We are okay. In fact, we are telling those people who want to choose their own IBC, hire your own brother, your sister, your uncle, your cousin if you can.
Just put them
we will
there.
still beat you as long as we have an IBC duly constituted by the Constitution, because we are this one country that has got only 22 million voters, and we are finding it necessary to have 7 commissioners for IBC. Countries like India that have 990 million voters, not inhabitants, voters, have an IBC that has got 3 commissioners, and it's working. We are spending about 2,800 shillings per voter. They asked for 61 billion. 61 billion, if you do your maths and divide by the 22 million voters, it means that each voter, it costs 2,800 shillings per voter to vote. UK, a very developed country, they spend 480 shillings per voter. Our neighbors, Rwanda, here spends 129 shillings per voter. Nigeria, with 100 million voters, not inhabitants. Nigeria with 100 million voters spends about 1,000 shillings per voter to vote. And countries that are developed, bigger countries like the US, they spend about 700 shillings per person to vote.
Yeah.
Sisi tuna spend 2,800 shillings to vote. It goes to tell you that we have bad manners in how we manage our resources.
Wow. Messages to the president this morning. And, even as the week then does come to an end, there's certain things that we are saying that we would like to get attention on. CT, your message to the president.
Okay, Mr. President, the clock is ticking. And every good thing or bad thing comes to an end. And the political shelf life of any politician comes with the idea and the conversation around a legacy. And that legacy stays with you long, long, long after you have gone. Should the legacy be a legacy of the president who transformed Kenya and made it into the powerhouse of the continent and beyond? Or will it be the legacy of a president whose people at every turn were disappointed by promises which were never kept? It's a decision that must be made, and the only person who can make that decision is you, Mr. President. You have time, but that time is ticking. In fact, one could argue that we're almost at the 11th hour. But the decision is yours, and only yours, and yours alone.
Dennis?
Dear Mr. President, I live in this country, but one thing that happens is I am not so safe or feel as though my security is assured. We live at a time when abductions have become the order of the day, and even those responsible, including yourself, say you do not know who is abducting Kenyans. It behoves upon you as an authority and someone who was given the opportunity to serve the people of Kenya to take care of the security of each and every single person. Mr. President, extrajudicial killings is something that has happened, and even the cases that have been reported, we see no movement towards that in making sure that justice is served. We talk about the gangs that are wielding pangas in broad daylight, threatening our economic activities like tourism at the coast, Mr. President. That needs to be addressed. We talk about the chiefs who were abducted. What's the story? What's the progress? That has gone quiet. Yesterday, or the other day, we saw a headstone being put in Turkana for those who were killed in your country, Mr. President. And Kenyans are telling you, our security is wanting. We need you to address that, Mr. President. Security cannot be taking care of you, yet next door, a few meters, Kenyans are being robbed in broad daylight in a presidential function, Mr. President. Security is paramount, not just for you, but for the entire republic.
Dear Mr. President, I see that the focus over the last couple of weeks has been what will happen in 2027. Dear Mr. President, you've been around the country. You've seen what's happening with development. You yourself have made promises about certain things that are going to be happening with state resources. That speaks one thing to me, that it is clear in your mind that what development should be like in Kenya, it is not yet. And that's why we see some of the promises being made, because you understand that to a certain extent, things that should have been done have not been done. Dear Mr. President, you went to Northeastern. You saw the things that happened. By the way, the 5 gentlemen who had been kidnapped or abducted, we still don't know where they are. Mr. President, this happened a day before you landed in that area, and you told us that you were going to do whatever it took to make sure that they were found. It would be great to know what happened to them. Dear Mr. President, you then, when you left there, talked about roads that would be built, and you talked about things that would happen. I think it's great that you did. That means that the realization that these things don't exist is top on your mind, one would hope. You then went to the coast, and you then went and said different things. You talked about electricity. You again talked about roads. You then went to the western part of the nation, where you made further promises. You came to Nairobi, where you did, like Fanya Mambo says this morning, mention about, a chapati machine. You talked about turning one of the largest slums in East Africa into a city on its own. I don't know if you realized the mere intricacy of doing that when those promises were made. You then have gone to Central, where you've talked about certain things. So I wonder, Mr. President, were these things said because you want to make sure that development is top, or were these things said because you want Kenyans to give you another opportunity to have another go at the presidency? My hope would be, dear Mr. President, that it was because you really do want to see Kenya flourish. It would be my hope, Mr. President, that you would want to see road infrastructure improved. It would be my hope that you actually do want to see young children go to school in a system that made sense from beginning to end. It would be my hope, dear Mr. President, that you wanted to actually see water flow in taps, and not that you were making promises so that people could put you back in the presidential seat come 2027. Dear Mr. President, there's a lot to be done, and I actually do feel sometimes that you're juggling many balls in the air. But it would be great to see that you're actually trying to make sure that each of those balls is knocked or popped and make sure that something is done. There's a lot of work to be done, Mr. President, and I hope that as you do go around, that it is for the work to be done and not the currency that's being paid for votes to come in 2027. Fanya Mambo, over to you.
Dear Mr. President, I will speak to you as someone who comes from Dagoretti South constituency. Dear Mr. President, I would like to tell you we have a huge problem with the idea of cleaning up Nairobi River. Dear Mr. President, I have seen your people come and tried to mark beacons. They have said that they are going to go 30 to 60 meters into our land in the name of riparian land. Dear Mr. President, they are saying that we are not supposed to be on that riparian land. Remember, in Dagoretti South, like any other place, we have freehold titles. Dear Mr. President, our grandfathers are buried in those places. Dear Mr. President, they are saying that they are going to destroy the houses that we have afforded on riparian land to build affordable housing that my people have chosen to call avoidable housing. Dear Mr. President, they are only doing that within Dagoretti South and Dagoretti North. When it gets to Lavington, they kind of forget that there is riparian land and that we are supposed to cede 60 meters. They are not doing it. Dear Mr. President, when it gets to Kileleshwa, they completely forget and they build on top of this particular river. Dear Mr. President, we are saying that the people of Dagoretti South are willing to give you 60 meters into their land under the condition that the people of Lavington, the people of Kileleshwa, and the people of every other place along that river are also going to cede 60 meters. As I finish, dear Mr. President, I want to tell you that the people within the county who are telling you that and the Ministry of Environment appear not to be very good bedfellows with common sense. There is a tributary right outside Muslim. That tributary pours water into Nairobi River. The Nairobi City County has turned that tributary into a dumping site. There is a huge heap of garbage being dumped by the Nairobi City County outside Muslim Primary School in Kawangware, right there at the gate. And they are dumping heaps of garbage on top of a tributary that pours into the river that you are cleaning downstream. And then your people are wondering where garbage is coming from downstream. These people are not good bedfellows with common sense, because if they were, they would know that tributaries pour into rivers, and they would know that rivers end up downstream, and you'd be collecting garbage that is being poured by Nairobi City County right outside Muslim Primary School. Dear Mr. President, it's not possible to clean up Nairobi River when you have Sakajas County pouring garbage outside the gate of a primary school at a tributary that flows into the same river. Thank you.
The opportunities lie, dear Mr. President, to actually turn Kenya into a robust economic powerhouse. Dear Mr. President, the opportunities lie right here in your hands. While this is happening, I would like to take the opportunity to remind you today that 2027, you have a bill of 117 billion shillings that needs to be paid. It's a loan. The year after that, there's yet another loan of almost a similar amount that needs to be paid. And these payments go well into 2032. If you were to become president again in 2027, these are the things that await you. Dear Mr. President, we're looking at a situation whereby your children in this country are making selections into a system whereby you don't have enough teachers because they've chosen to go into the private system because the public system just does not work. This is happening now. It's not happening futurely, it's happening now. Dear Mr. President, there are people who are walking into hospital today who are not able to bank on a system which you promised would work from day one. There are people who are not able to eat